Hi, folks. This is Abel James, and thanks so much for listening to the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Today's episode of the show is a really special one, actually, with one of our listeners. Our guest's name is Cole, and he's going to tell his story about how he went from being a 90-pound, scrawny World of Warcraft champion into a 175-pound fitness model and bodybuilder. He has a really, really inspiring story about how to pay it forward. And there's a lot that you're going to be learning from the show. But I hear you. You guys have said we love having best-selling authors and celebrities on the show and real experts, but we also love hearing from real people. So in the next few weeks, I'm bringing on a few people just like that. So if you think that you'd be great for the show, feel free to send us a note and or tweet me or write me on Facebook, whatever, and I'll see if I can have you on. Obviously, I have very few spots for this sort of thing, but I love to hear from you guys. A few announcements before we get to the show. I just got back from being in San Francisco out filming with Dr. Sarah Gottfried, a past guest of the show, as well as Dr. Pedram Shojai, who was also a past guest of the show. We've been filming for a new documentary as well as a new web series that it's basically like a sofa series where we sit around and talk about how we can change the world, not just with eating real food, but also about changing our environment a bit too. We sat down with Ken from the Environmental Working Group. So really cool conversation. Stay tuned for that. I'll let you know when we release all those episodes out to you. Now, you may have remembered that in the past week or two, I've been asking you guys what you love about the show so I can keep bringing that to you, as well as where I could improve. And it's been nuts. Like my inbox has just exploded. There have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of really powerful emails from all you guys. And I thank you so much for sharing your feedback about the show. There's been most of it has been extraordinarily positive, which I really appreciate. And some of it has been some really, really constructive criticism. So I appreciate that too. On the whole, let me just say before I get to it, if you haven't heard back from me yet, just know that I literally have not gone through all of them yet because there are so many, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can. For those who I've already gotten back to, I apologize if it's a short little note, but really there are so many, and I promise I'm reading them all and I hear you. But generally what I'm hearing is you guys, let's start with the criticisms. You appreciate that we don't have advertisements or sponsors or anything like that. I want to be really clear though that I'm not trying to put down any shows that do have sponsors and advertisements and what have you. I'm just saying that's a choice that we're deciding to make so that there's no chance of anyone clouding our message. And also I just want to make it as enjoyable of an experience as possible for you. No one really loves hearing commercials. And so if there's any way that we can stay away from that, I'm going to do that as long as we possibly can. So for now, the show is entirely listener supported. So I really appreciate all of the donations that have come in as well. It's crazy. Some of you have donated more than hundreds of dollars, and I know you're anonymous. I'm not going to mention who it is, but I really do appreciate it. So that was one piece of the message, that you guys appreciate that this is advertising and sponsorship free, and I intend to keep it that way. Also, you appreciate that there's a positive message in what we're saying and the way that I interact with guests. The non-confrontational approach comes very naturally to me. I think there's a lot that even if someone is a vegan and I'm more paleo or Weston A. Price or just eating like our grandmothers used to eat, we should be embracing the similarities instead of fighting over the little differences and whether or not it's going to kill you if you eat a bean or not. And so I'm going to keep that up, make sure that we're keeping the message positive. Now, some of you have also said it would be great if I could call people on their BS a little bit more. I hear you, and I will. There have been a few shows in the recent past where I haven't been quite as hard on some of the guests and questioned them quite as deeply about some more controversial topics as I probably could have. So I just want you to know I'm learning as I do this. I want to keep the message positive, and that's always going to be the way that I lean. But at the same time, I'm not going to let people get away with saying things that, really aren't supported by science or are risky decisions or things that won't help you. So I'm going to keep that in mind as well. And feel free, if you hear that there's someone on the show and I'm not really calling them on that, then let me know about it. I hear you. I want to continue to keep this as a conversation. You've also said that the show is very relatable, yet smart at the same time. I'm not pounding you with $100,000 words. I'm not using super sciencey rabbit hole type language, which makes it so that people who are just dipping their toes into this show, into this lifestyle of eating real food, losing weight effortlessly, and all of that, it's not an exercise of walking around with your iPod and a dictionary trying to figure out what the heck is going on. I'm trying to, dial it in, make sure that you guys can understand what's going on, whether you're a scientist or not. So I hear you. I appreciate that. And then this actually just came into my inbox today, the final message. A lot of you have said, not only, have I gone from 300 pounds down to 150 pounds since I started listening to your show, which is amazing. I've gotten a lot of emails like those, or people who've lost 20 pounds in a month, whatever. That stuff isn't nearly as exciting to me, as impressive as it is, as the people who say next, after they lost 20 pounds in 30 days, that they are empowered and they're starting to change their lives. Those are my favorite stories to hear, because it's not about losing weight or building muscle or anything like that. It's about building self-confidence. It's about feeling empowered to live the life that you've always dreamed of. That's what this is all about. And I think that I'm actually going to read a note that I just got from one of our listeners, which is just amazing. So I think it illustrates what I'm talking about here, about being inspirational and empowered. Hi, I just want to give you a big thank you for doing a podcast with Lewis, which is the one from last week. I realized that I do not want to be getting by in life, but live my life. Right now, I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids living in Israel, in the occupied territories. When Israel is on the news, it's because of the land I live on. On my way home, passing through a Palestinian village, I decided that it's time for peace. I decided that I have to make an event in my community where Palestinian kids are going to come and meet the Jewish kids so that the next generation will be educated not to blow themselves up, but to live life. But of course, when I mention this to someone, they think I'm crazy and no chance such a thing can happen. Listening to this podcast made me realize that I'm not, and that it is possible. And I know that I will not heal the whole world, but I want to at least start from somewhere. Thank you for introducing Lewis to me. I listen to your podcast because I'm interested in wellness and I want to lose some weight, but you really surprised me with this one. Keep up the good work. Love your podcast. Love and peace from the Holy Land, Malvina. Thank you so much for writing in. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the reason that I do the show. It's of course you can lose weight, build muscle, live better, eat better, all of that, but it's really about something a little bit bigger. So I'm so glad that so many of you have taken the time to share that story with me, of being inspired, of changing your life, because that's what this is really all about. Now, I also want to thank you. Some of you have donated hundreds of dollars, which is just incredible. I always want to keep this show listener supported. You guys are really stepping up and making that happen. If you haven't had a chance to, you can go ahead and go to fatburningman.com/donate. And feel free to support the show. You can sign up for $9 a month as a member of the Fat Burning Tribe and basically support the show on an ongoing basis. And I'm going to be giving away some goodies for those of you who have already done that. So thank you so much. All right, enough of this one-off banter soliloquy. Let's get into the show with Cole. It's a really good one. I think you're going to like it. So Cole, he has a really inspiring story. He has a guest post that we just put up on the blog, already getting some great responses about that, but he really goes over his story on this show as well. We talk about why grinding in the world of Warcraft makes gaining 80 pounds of pure muscle easy, how the world treats you as a 90-pound weakling, what celiac disease actually feels like, and why one bodybuilder paying it forward to a scrawny teenager changed the world. All right, let's go hang out with Cole. All right, folks, today we're here with Nicolas Cole. He's a nonfiction writer, fitness model, and actually a listener to the Fat Burning Man show, and that's how we got hooked up in the first place. Cole, as he's called, spent the first 18 years of his life undiagnosed with celiac disease and just happens to have a history as one of the highest ranked World of Warcraft video game players in North America. That's awesome. How's it going, Cole?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So I have to start with the obvious thing that sticks out there, which is being a World of Warcraft champion. Is that something that you're still rocking the house doing, or is that kind of
Mm,
behind you at this point?
no, it's long behind me.
It would another lifetime, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I'll always be a gamer at heart, but I stopped playing when I was 18, right when I started college,
Okay.
and then I relapsed a couple times, playing playing here and there. But no, it's definitely something that carried me through high school, and then I replaced it with other things. One of which was bodybuilding.
Yeah, right on, man. So why don't we? People probably haven't heard from you before, so why don't like I hate this question because I get it all the time and it puts people
Okay.
straight into autopilot. But for the sake of introducing yourself as a listener of the show to other listeners of the show, tell us your story. How did you get here? How did you get into um, bodybuilding from World of Warcraft? And I know that you've had kind of a rocky journey along the way. So let's go with that. Tell us about it.
Okay. All right. So between the ages of 14 and 18 is really when the peak of my celiac disease was triggered.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was allergic to gluten. A lot of people don't really know what that is, but that's bread. So that's in everything.
Yeah.
Even things like salad dressings. Like people don't realize that it really is everywhere, especially in America. And so, because I was sick pretty much every day, I very much coped through playing video games because there wasn't a whole lot else to do. I was constantly home from school sick.
Hmm.
I actually got a letter home. I think it was my sophomore, junior year, saying that I had missed so many days of school that if I missed another 2 weeks, I would need to repeat the grade.
Really?
So yeah,
Wow.
and some of it was, well, most of it was from the sickness, and then some of it was from the fact that because I'm a competitive person and this game became very important to me, um, then I would intentionally want to skip school as well so that I could continue practicing the game.
Right.
And that's why I
Like that South
achieved what I
Park.
achieved. Right, right. Yeah, unfortunately. And so I really just kept at it and continued playing because there was nothing else to do. And then when I turned 18, I found out that I had celiac disease.
Hmm.
And that diagnosis spurred, uh, I was forced to learn a lot about food very quickly.
Hmm.
And the only thing that I could really figure out was that all I could eat was chicken and rice and vegetables. My diet it was very strict,
The
and
bodybuilding diet right there.
yeah, and I didn't know that it was a bodybuilder's diet.
Yeah.
So simultaneously at the same time, I had fractured my spine when I was about 14 or 15, playing
Hmm.
hockey.
Wow.
And I think that that was because of my lack of nutrition. My bones were probably so fragile because it wasn't anything cool, I wasn't like speeding down the ice, breakaway goal, 2 seconds left in the game, and then
Yeah.
I get hit and crack my back. I felt weird during practice, and I
Mm.
fractured my spine.
Yeah.
And my back problems persisted until I was 18. So at the same time that I found out I had celiac disease, I found out through my dad, who's a doctor, that I also have what's called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a rare joint disease that makes your joints like cramp in on themselves. And so if you aren't physically active, then it feels like you have muscle cramps like nonstop,
Mm.
basically. So um, he basically said, you either need to have surgery, which is something that you would never suggest to an 18-year-old kid. That's something that most people go through when they're like, late 20s, early 30s,
Hmm.
and have like a disc replacement or something. And so for me, he said, I really just suggest you start working out. And so taking that and pairing it with this diet that now I had to be on it kind of was like the perfect recipe for bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really mean for that to happen. I just kind of fell into it. And so I started learning about it, started learning about lifting weights. And the more that I researched, the more that I found out that um, this is what all the big people do.
Hmm.
They all eat chicken and rice all day, and to
Yeah.
them it's no thing. So it was my way of really coping with that thought, because it's hard being 18 and you're about to go off to college and everyone's like, let's order pizzas, let's drink beer, let's do all these things that are obviously wheat based, and I can't participate in any of that. So it's not only a food thing, but now it's a social thing.
Yeah.
So now it's even more difficult to make friends. Now it's more difficult to fit in. And so I had to find where I fit in now in the world, basically. And I really found that in the gym. The gym is like that one place where almost everyone's on a diet and almost everyone is, preferring being at the gym than being at a party. And I mean, like the hardcore people, you know what I mean? And so that really became my community. And once I found that, I went full force in it. I joke to people saying I graduated with a creative writing degree, but I minored in bodybuilding because I was there 4 hours a day, every day, doing my meal prep hours a day and lifting with guys that were 150 pounds bigger than me. And you know what I mean? Like it nurtured me in a way that, kind of the same way that World of Warcraft did. It gave me an outlet that I needed at that time in my life.
That's so cool. And you didn't, start off being kind of like normal and then putting on a bunch of muscle and looking like a bodybuilder. It was an uphill battle for you. You started at 90 pounds. Is that right?
I started, well, let's see. I was playing hockey at 14 and I was probably barely 90 pounds.
Yeah.
By the time I was 17 or 18, I think I was 110 pounds. And like at 17, 110 pounds, I just passed 100. That's all I cared about. Like I was like, oh, I'm huge now.
Right.
And I really wasn't even close, And then 18 is really when I started lifting weights. I would say I probably started at 115 pounds. And then now I'm 23 and 170. So
wow. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's nuts. Putting on 70 pounds of muscle. And you're ripped. Like, I mean, if people go to the blog post, they'll be able to see your before and after pictures, but it's absurd. It's usually the other way around, right? Like people start at 250 and then they go down to 170, but you start at 90 and then you go to 170, and it's really quite revealing. We'll talk about what it's like to be a hard gainer in a little bit, and what people can do to put on muscle like you did. But I'd love for you to describe, just because there haven't been that many people who have been on the show who actually have celiac disease, just lots of people who are gluten free.
Right.
What is it like before you're diagnosed? What do you feel like when you eat wheat? What happens?
Honestly, it is a mix between feeling like you've suddenly come down with 24-hour stomach flu, and at the same time that like emotional feeling of your significant other breaking up with you, because it's such like it affected my mood so much, and because I got so used to being afraid of eating food, basically, is that as soon as I would feel that feeling, it wasn't just a physical feeling of being sick. It was that mental and emotional feeling of I will never be normal. I mean, before I was 18, I accepted the fact that the best that I could hope for in life was a job that would let me work from the bathroom.
Wow.
I mean, that was my mental state. And like, I didn't understand the concept of really having a group of friends that like went out and got pizza all the time. Like there really is a reason why I became and why I took World of Warcraft so seriously, because when you're a competitive person and you need that outlet, it was the only thing that I had, really, you know? And so that's why for people, when I go to a restaurant and they're like, so you're just gluten-free, like you just, if it's a little bit of wheat, like it's okay. And I have to make it so clear. It's like, it can't be a little bit. I don't even eat out a lot, which is why I cook almost everything that I eat, because it's emotional as much as it is physical. Yeah.
So now that it's really starting to catch on, right? This whole gluten-free thing, and a lot of people are accepting that wheat and gluten aren't necessarily that good for you, even if you don't have the disease that you have. But do you think that there is a large population of people who are mildly intolerant, or most people are intolerant? I would love to hear your opinion. Is wheat unequivocally bad, or is it something that has become bad because of what's described in Wheat Belly in prior shows and that sort of thing.
I mean, that's one thing about nutrition and even going further with workouts and supplements and everything is like, there truly is no one right answer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, even if you go into the gym and someone's like, what are you lifting for back today? My favorite back exercise is going to be different than the next guy's. And for me, like, if I didn't have celiac disease, I could eat junk food all day and I would get even bigger. Whereas other people, they have to watch their calorie intake like crazy. Otherwise, you know what I mean? So everybody's body is different.
Absolutely.
I really don't. I don't think that I have the knowledge to be able to say like scientifically whether or not gluten is bad. I just know that for me it is, and I know that for a lot of people it is. And I'm sure that there's varying degrees. Like I can kind of tolerate milk products, but I choose not to. So I've eliminated those from my diet as well.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I am like full blown lactose intolerant.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure that there are other people too. The issue that I have with it is just when people treat it like a fashion statement. They're just like, oh, well, I'm gluten-free this week. And then it kind of like, it makes it difficult for those of us that actually have to deal with it. Like, why don't they put gluten on all of the food products like they do nuts? Because a nut allergy is like socially acceptable in a way.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
but
totally.
a gluten allergy is people are just kind of like, oh, well, you'll be sick for a little bit, but you'll get over it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you'll die. And it's like, well, I didn't want to ruin my day, So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But it is. People wear gluten-free like a fashion. They treat it like that. It's just one of those kind of, well, my face is a little puffy, we'll go gluten-free this week type things,
Right.
which has made restaurants and food manufacturers really approach the whole thing in a really nonchalant way, which is problematic for people like you, right? Who this is a serious medical issue. I remember my drummer in college. he had celiac disease, and we just ribbed him so hard whenever we were drinking beer, and we're just like, oh, this must be so hard that you can't have any beer, just like making fun of the fact that he can't eat bread. But it's like, it's a very serious thing. And even a little bit can not only double you over, but like you said, completely ruin your day. And even like a few days, just this minute amount of this substance.
Yeah, it is. It is no fun having to defend yourself everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Especially like, I'm a 23-year-old kid. If I go out anywhere, especially if I go someplace where alcohol is being served, I have to spend the whole night defending myself. Why don't you drink? Why don't you want this? Why don't you want that? And even if I say like, oh, well, that's all made from gluten, like I'm not really about that, then people go further and then they're like, well, this one is made from potatoes instead of gluten, so you can drink this, right? And they don't even understand that my stomach has been abused for 18 years. Alcohol is like it's a really strong substance. Like even if I drink something that's potato based and not wheat based, it's still a strong substance. And because I didn't have an answer for this for so long, I can't even really tolerate that. You know what I mean? So, and then on top of that, it's like, I take bodybuilding seriously. Why would I want to go out and get drunk? So it's like, there's all these different parts, and it's like, I have to defend myself everywhere I go. And people, whether you're talking about alcohol or whether you're talking about your diet, gluten-free, lactose-free, allergic to nuts, whatever, it's like, if it's not what other people do, they have a problem with it. And so they challenge you for it. And that's what makes it difficult for a lot of people to make changes in their life, because it's not just about the food then, it's about social culture. It's like, if I'm gluten-free now, well, who's going to make it difficult for me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally. Now let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be that little guy, in terms of perception, the way that other people treat you, compared to being a bodybuilder or even a fitness model now. That shift, we've talked about that a few times on the show, whether it's going from, being 350 pounds down to 200 pounds, or if it's, bulking up and becoming that ideal image, in air quotes, that some people seek. What is it like? How does the world treat you differently?
Um, I've really been trying to figure this out myself, because in many ways I'm still going through it and I'm
Yeah.
seeing the other side of the spectrum. Uh, but I feel like what it really comes down to is the fact that the body is a physical representation of achievement. And especially in America, we gravitate strongly to achievement.
Hmm.
And so when you are the little guy, you look like it would be impossible for you to achieve anything. And so people disregard you. They don't take the time to understand you. I mean, I work really hard at bodybuilding, but I can honestly say that the most exhausting time in my life was when I was trying to be the best World of Warcraft player ever. I
Really?
mean, yeah, I mean those there was a time when for 4 months straight I was going to bed at 4 in the morning and waking up at 7 for school and going through 8 hours of school on 3 hours of sleep and sneaking around my house because my parents wanted me to be studying instead of playing on the computer. And I exhausted myself. I mean, that was the most exhausting 4 months of my entire life. And in comparison, bodybuilding is just more regimented. It's more of like structured discipline.
Hmm.
But the work ethic, I mean, they're really not that far off. And for some reason, people really respect the work ethic that comes with bodybuilding. They really respect it when it comes to like things that are tangible forms of achievement. But
Hmm.
if you say, "Oh, I achieved something mental," whether it's I became the best chess player in the world or I became like, a world-renowned pianist, like it depends on who you're talking to and who's going to approve of that.
Sure.
And as that little kid, a lot of people didn't want to take the time to learn. And so, you know, I, I mean, I didn't go to school dances. Like I couldn't get a girlfriend. I couldn't get girls to talk to me. Uh, I had trouble even relating to the athletes in my school, even though I was an athlete too, but it was the fact that I didn't look anything like it.
Hmm.
All these other kids are 15, 16, 17, now they're starting to get biceps and now they're like, looking strong. And here I am looking like I haven't eaten in 3 months,
Yeah.
and so a lot of people just assume they see what you look like and they assume something about you and they put you in a box. And nobody understood that I was a very competitive kid with potential, I guess. And then now you go to the flip side and um, it only takes one person. It only takes one person. I was in the gym 2 years ago. I had just gotten my membership right when I transferred colleges to 3 years ago, right when I transferred colleges to Chicago. And about 2, 3 weeks after I got my gym membership, I was in front of the mirrors doing hammer curls. And this like the biggest dude in the gym, like the biggest dude came up to me and all he said was, "Nice form, man." He just like he acknowledged my presence. And I
Yeah.
I was still like 145 pounds. I mean, I wasn't even big, right? But I was like trying my heart out. And he just came up and acknowledged me. And I appreciated that so much that then I wanted to ask him all these questions. So I, of course, for the rest of the workout, like would walk over to where he was and be like, well, how do you get these muscles in your back? Or like, what are these ones called? Or, just ask him all these questions. And he saw how hungry I was. And
Yeah.
so I think he ended up telling me later on that he really saw that same part in him when he was first starting out and
Yeah.
he related to that. And he invited me to come lift with him the second day. And 3 years later, we're still awesome friends. We lift together almost every week. And that dude taught me everything. And that's all it takes is one person to say, like, I see you for who you are, but I also see you for who you could be.
Yeah.
And now you want to talk about the other side of the spectrum. I go anywhere. I go anywhere, and people treat me like I should be the center of attention simply because of the size of my arms, or like how big my chest is, or how much you can see of my abs. But nothing changed. I'm still that nerdy kid, just hungry to learn. And for some reason, the body makes people care.
Now that's not always a good thing. You're getting me all choked up with the story about the guy helping you at the gym. That's so cool because it's an example of what happens in life when the right thing happens, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk some more about not everything's great, right? When you're completely objectified.
No.
And especially when you go from the opposite of that, being ignored, to being objectified in the center of attention because of something that, like, I would assume, and I'm probably putting words in your mouth, but you're not doing it to have the biggest biceps or the biggest chest or to be the center of attention. You're doing it because it's something that you like to do. You believe in the process, not necessarily in the result as much. That's what I found in most people who are doing bodybuilding, athletes, that sort of thing. They enjoy the journey. So what does that feel like emotionally when you go from being ignored to being the center of attention? It's not always good.
Oh, it's not always good, but it also is whatever you choose to make it. There's a lot of people that, I mean, I even went through this too, as soon as you start to put on a little size, like you start to carry yourself a little differently and your confidence goes up, and you kind of can't help but be attracted to the fact that now people are paying attention to you. But at some point, and it depends on how aware you choose to be, but at some point you kind of have to make the decision for yourself. Do I pick the road where I become like this becomes me, like this gives me meaning and purpose, or do I choose to do something with it? For me, I have learned that now people pay attention to what I say. When I was 90 pounds and I was saying the same things, no one listened. But now, like 170 pounds now, and if I have an opinion or if I want to share something, people listen.
Well, because you could throttle them, right?
Well, that's the joke, man. I always say the worst I could do is write you a mean poem. Like I just, that's not even me, Right. And so I really feel like you're right. For me, it is all about the process, and it is all about practice. It very much is my daily meditation. It's my way of practicing being confronted with a challenge and overcoming it. It's as much of an emotional journey as it is a physical and a mental. But it also now has really come to my attention that I can do for someone else what my friend had done for me.
Yeah.
I can go to the next kid and say, I know what that feeling feels like. You're 90 pounds and no one's paying attention to you. No one cares like what you think of the world. But you put on 90 pounds of muscle and suddenly everybody is like, oh, well, what does he have to say? And so if you pair those two together and you use that to your advantage, then you can really give yourself a platform to then once again help the next kid. Give the next kid, like, why is it uncool for one kid to play chess, but it's cool for another kid to play football?
Yeah.
They're both strategy. Why does one count and the other one doesn't? Why does it make me a nerd for playing World of Warcraft, but like the kid who goes and starts a business at 18, oh, well, he's an entrepreneur. He's brilliant. They're both strategy. They're both mental. They're both games.
Yeah.
So it really is about going to that next kid who's like who's afraid of putting himself out there, afraid of pursuing what he wants to do, and saying, if no one else believes in you, I believe in you because I've been there. And so if I can do it, then you can do it. And that's what my friend did for me. And that's what I hopefully want to do for the next kid, because I would not be where I am right now if that person hadn't done that for me. And I think that that's really important.
That's awesome. And I can relate as well. I joke that I learned management consulting, which is my job, and strategy from playing StarCraft growing up, because it's just like managing all these different systems and building something as quickly as you can. It really, I mean, it applies to business. It does. Building a business, building a website, building a following, building a podcast, all these things. It takes that drive. It's so interesting. The video game world, my girlfriend Allison, that's where she comes from. She worked for BioWare, launched the new Star Wars game, and she was a professional gamer on a reality TV show about it even. And that world, awesome. is full of brilliant people who are working really, really hard building these systems and being really innovative with the way that they're playing these games, such that when you focus that energy and that talent in a different domain, all of a sudden you can put on 80 pounds of muscle, or you can start a thriving business out of nowhere. It's really fascinating. But what you describe in terms of the societal approval or disapproval of these various things, which may take the same amount of energy, like bodybuilding compared to playing World of Warcraft. It's just fascinating to acknowledge that one of those things is looked down upon and the other one is kind of looked up upon, so to speak. You know, it's like people respect bodybuilders in a way.
On that note, which is fun fact of the day. So in the fitness community, there's two really big names. The first one being Ziz. I'm sure you've heard of, is like the fitness model type of kid. He quit World of Warcraft to start bodybuilding.
Really?
Yeah, I read that online. And then another name, Jeff Side, who's currently, well, he just became, I believe, the youngest male IFBB pro. And he too, I read in an interview saying, I quit World of Warcraft and started bodybuilding. And so, and you can even get like philosophical with it, being like, well, you know, fantasy games, you want to be a hero, and then you start bodybuilding and now you have all this armor on, and in many ways that is true, but I feel like what it really comes down to is the fact that those games instill in you, when you take them seriously, those games instill in you a work ethic that not many other things can. And when people like, it's like a great story, but I hate mentioning it just because it's school, but so I graduated college with almost a near perfect GPA.
Yeah.
And this is coming from the kid who could barely get a C average in high school. And the reason is because studying for 2 or 3 hours absolutely pales in comparison to 15, 20 hour long, grinding sessions, you know, and me and my friends still joke. I mean, those hours when your eyes are like falling out of their sockets and all you want to do is go to sleep, and you're like, you can taste old Red Bull in your mouth, and it for some reason you keep going, and it's because you have a goal. And so when you flip that to something else and a teacher's like, oh, you're really gonna have to study for like a couple hours tonight, it's a joke. It's a joke when you really, really understand it. And that's why I have a problem with people that are like, well, that outlet's okay, but this one's not, because who are you to say that you're not going to end up learning something that's of great importance? No one would have thought that my playing that video game would have taught me given me a foundation to graduate with honors and to put on all this muscle and to end up getting a job to where my knowledge of the internet helps me significantly. So whether we're talking about bodybuilding or whether we're talking about anything else, it's really just about giving other people that freedom to explore what it is that is important to them, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And one of the coolest things too, that I think a lot of people don't understand, I think a lot of people who are listening to the show probably get it, but in the general community, they assume that people who are in the gym pumping iron are meatheads and morons and not intelligent, and just that's all they do. They just lift weights, and they kind of, whenever you lift weights in whatever way, you just put on loads of muscle. It's not like that at all in my experience.
Not at all.
A lot of the bodybuilders who I know are some of the most technical, scientific, regimented, intelligent people I know. And the dedication that it takes to really succeed in bodybuilding and fitness modeling and that sort of thing is impressive. And it's almost as far as you can get from being a meathead in most cases.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's most definitely the people in there that, you know, and they're still my friends, and I walk in and I'm like, what's going on today? And like, they can't even respond with anything but, oh, I'm doing legs, you know, and then they immediately go into their routine. I'm gonna do 4 sets of extensions. I'm gonna do 4 sets of squats. And I'm just like, so how are you doing, man? You know, like there's of course people like that, but there's also people like that in every industry. You know, you could walk into the dentist's office and be like, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, just, you know, filling another cavity today. You know what I mean? So, but in terms of not all people being meatheads, I mean, I have plenty of really funny stories from that. I mean, if you want to just take me for example, I would go to the gym with a notepad, and in between sets, I would come up with ideas for things that I wanted to write about. And so I would like pump out a set real quick and then like run into my backpack, pull out my notepad and write down something funny that had happened in the gym and be like, oh, I'm going to put that in a book one day.
Yeah.
And I would walk around and people would ask, what are you studying in school? Assuming it was like nutrition or something. And I would say, I want to write books. And so many people would just stare at me like, like, why, like almost like, why are you here then?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
And one of the guys that I lifted with, who was another huge bodybuilder at my gym, he taught me all about food and meal prep and kind of the other side. It's like what happens outside of the gym to really make things happen. And with him, we lifted almost every day too for like 8 months. And every single day we would lift for 2 hours. And the entire time during the lift, he would talk me through how I was going to write this book that I've been working on for 2 years. So, and on the outside, people see us. I mean, he's like this massive, like 250-pound bodybuilder, and people have no idea that after he's done, you know, like dapping them up and being like, "What's up, man?" He's turning back to me, being like, "But how cool would the plot development be if you wrote it in first person one chapter and then third person the next?" Like, it's the farthest thing from being a meathead. You know? You can't judge a book by its cover, man.
Yeah, you can. And it's so interesting because you went from one domain to another, and each are, I'd say, equally caricatured, but the caricatures don't really reflect what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly.
So interesting. So let's talk rubber meets the road, because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how the heck do you put on that amount of muscle, especially as a hard gainer? And for those of you who don't know what a hard gainer is, it's basically the opposite of what most Americans are doing right now, which is just loading on fat and muscle sometimes just as easily as drinking water or something. You know, it's like it just goes on, and that's typical. But you also have these usually people with smaller frames start out being a little bit skinnier, and it seems to be impossible to put muscle on. So how do you take one of those frames and then put 70, 80 pounds of muscle on?
Honestly, you hammer away at it until it happens. I mean, it is such a long process that I can't even sit here and be like, just give it your all and you'll see it, because I mean, you're signing yourself up for years and years. The positive is that when you do start with a small frame, when you are an ectomorph, when you have such low body fat already, is that you see it's like the tiniest little result will show. So for me, starting at, you know, barely 110 pounds, as soon as I got that tiny little cut of a bicep, I was hooked. I was like, I see it, and I'm going to go after it for as long as it takes. And it took me a really long time. I would say the biggest, you know, if I'm going to share like a real tip here, is the biggest thing that I can say is you're going to have to eat so much food that you have to space it out. When I first started, I didn't understand this concept. So I did the calculations, right? So a pound of body fat per gram of protein and 2 grams of carbs per pound of body fat. And like you draw it all out and you're like, okay, well, so I need to eat 140 grams of protein and 300 grams of carbs a day to grow. But in my brain, I knew that there was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There was no such, like, no one had introduced me to the concept of eating more than 3 meals in a day. So I would take that massive number and I would divide it by 3, and suddenly I'd be staring at a plate bigger than my head for each meal. And I had to eat it all if I wanted to grow. So when I first started, I mean, I was literally making plates of food so big that that could have been eaten in an entire day. You know, so I would sit there for sometimes 2, sometimes 3 hours and force feed myself
Wow.
until that entire plate was gone. And I would be so full. And like, if you really want the truth of it, I mean, there were times where I would eat so much that I would throw up.
Wow.
There were times that I would eat, get too full, like have to go empty my stomach and then come back and finish it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it, and no one introduced this concept to me of smaller meals throughout the day. And once I got that, that's really where I started to see the changes happen, because instead of having 3 meals a day, I had 6.
Yeah.
And so everything got way smaller. And what it does is it changes your metabolism in a different way. So you're eating smaller meals, but you're looking forward to your next one almost as soon as you're done eating it, because it wasn't really that much food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's way more manageable. And then it also works with keeping your body constantly out of a catabolic state.
Hmm.
So you're able to actually put on, you're able to put on muscle instead of just eating a ton of food and then being too full to eat your next meal. And then you're like, oh, well, I can't eat it at all, so I'm going to go to bed. And then you miss out on that meal. And then it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. It's so funny because it's to many people, I'm sure it's the opposite of what they deal with, right? Which is just the
Oh, yeah.
constant feeling like you're eating too much, you're going to put on fat. And that's why I think there's so much confusion out there. That's one of the reasons anyway, is that we have different, you and I have different body types, right? I'm more
Right.
of a mesomorph and you're more of an
Right.
ectomorph. And then endomorphs have something completely different that's going on.
Yeah.
But for me, I've experimented with, eating one large meal a day or eating 8 tiny meals a
Hmm.
day. And it's amazing to see the differences both in your hormones, the way you look, the ease
Oh,
at
yeah.
which you put on muscle. But what I think I'm hearing you saying is that if you're a hard gainer, it's not about necessarily just exercising tons. Like you've been talking about food. It's about eating, having a
Oh,
real ironclad eating strategy.
yeah. Good luck trying to put on size if you're not eating. If and I say this with like as much sincerity as possible. If you are not eating to the point of discomfort for the first like long time, you're not doing it right.
Interesting.
Because if you're like, my metabolism is so incredibly fast. I've gotten to the point now with food where I have my meals and my regimen down so well that
Hmm.
if I miss a meal, or if say I change something, like if my body's used to quinoa and I have white rice instead, so I'm going from a brown carb to a white carb,
Hmm.
I notice the difference in my workout.
Hmm.
So I'm very in tune now with how food affects my body, and I can tell you, even now where I'm at 170 pounds, I know that the only way that I'm going to get above 170 is if I eat even more. So if you're starting out, your stomach's going to be tiny. You're not going to be used to eating that much food, and you have to train your stomach to be able to take in that much.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to divide it. Well, for me, it was to divide it into smaller meals and then space it out throughout the day.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, it is an uphill battle.
So how much would you say you're eating now?
Um, I eat I eat 6 meals a day right now. So, and I keep my protein probably around 150 to 160 grams. And my carbs are really high, because I found for me that like some people work better with slightly lower carbs, but like super high protein.
Hmm.
And for me, my body is so dependent upon carbs, especially for my workouts and my energy and everything. Um, So I try and keep my carbs like as high as possible. The thing is, and here's a perfect example of like then different types of ectomorphs, right? So
Yeah.
I have a friend who's he's only like a year younger than me, and he's also an ectomorph, and he is not allergic to gluten, right? So he can eat dirty, he can
Sure.
eat Pop Tarts, and he can go out and have burgers and like whatever he wants, right? He can put on size 10 times faster than I can,
Hmm.
like without a doubt. And so I know for me that that's kind of, that's like my own just, I was born with that and I can't do anything about it.
Hmm.
Um, But the positive is that because I eat so clean, I, I'm I'm really like I'm lean all year round.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as bulking dirty and then cutting fat. I mean, if I just deplete my water for an afternoon, I look like how someone else might look after 2, 3, 4 weeks of dieting.
Yeah.
And that's because I really only eat like rice or quinoa and vegetables and chicken or beef or steak, you know?
Yeah. I didn't hear sugar in there.
I mean, I won't lie, I'm a fiend for peanut butter.
Yeah.
But there's really not too much sugar. I'll do fruit. I'll do like smoothies here and there, but
Uh-huh.
I mean it's pretty. And then for breakfast, like oatmeal and eggs. Um, it's yeah, it's really clean.
Yeah. That's great. So when you're bulking in your own way, does that mean that you're bumping up calories significantly? Are you eating a lot more when you're trying to put on muscle as opposed to just maintaining your size?
Yeah, like right now because of just my schedule, like you have to be realistic with it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've got my own projects that I'm working on, and I work full time and bodybuilding. There are times in the year when you can go, okay, I can really devote a lot of time to the gym, and then there are other times where you're like, okay, I don't want to stop going to the gym, so I'm just gonna stay. I'm gonna maintain for right now. But the problem with being gluten free is that even in times when I go, okay, I've got 3 months to just do nothing but focus on the gym,
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard to bump up your calories because gluten free is inherently like a clean diet,
Yeah.
especially if you do and I do lactose too. I don't do lactose. I don't do gluten. So I can't do the Greek yogurt thing,
Yeah.
which helps a lot of people with putting on size.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the gluten free products like uh, I'm not sure how you say it, but Udi's, UDI,
Uh-huh.
they're like a big gluten-free company, and they make some great stuff. But the thing is, them and every other gluten-free brand is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So if you're on like a tight budget and you're already spending so much on food for bodybuilding, and you've got your gym membership, and when I can afford it, I like to get a protein powder or amino acids or something. But buying gluten-free on top of that just to get a little extra calories, that's really hard. And so for me, it's more just, okay, I'm just gonna eat 2 more PB&Js a day,
Mm-hmm.
or have 1 more brown rice chicken and avocado meal, or you know what I mean? You can
Yeah.
really only like do so much with it.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I haven't talked about this that much, but one of the ways that I learned how to lose fat was by looking at looking at the opposite. So for you, it's really, really hard to put on fat, to put on muscle, to put on anything because you can't eat wheat, because you don't eat sugar, because you're not using dairy. Those are the things. Like you take those out, you reverse engineer that, and all of a sudden, how do you lose fat? You take those things out, right? So, and it's really interesting because a lot of people don't really connect those dots. You know, wheat is still thought to be, in general parlance anyway, something that is good for your heart. It helps you lose weight, or it keeps you at a healthy weight, your blood pressure down, all that. But when you actually look at it, the people who rely upon this stuff day after day, even like hourly, you guys who are obsessed with this stuff, you know quite well that this is how it works. And one thing that I think is so interesting that I found when I started dabbling in the bodybuilding circles is that like this has been known and understood for a long time. The way that you lose fat, the way that you put on muscle, which exercises are best in terms of up-regulating your growth hormone and that sort of thing. Why do you think that there's such a huge divide between your community in bodybuilding and the rest of the developed world?
It is habit of thought and nothing more. I mean, I get approached in the gym all the time with people saying, how do you look the way that you look? And I hold nothing. I mean, first of all, I really don't take supplements because I really can't afford it. They are expensive, and what I do with food already it's a lot. And so the first thing people say is, what supplements are you on?
Mm-hmm.
And they're expecting, I mean, obviously the first thing they want to know is like, what is the pill, or what is that magic thing that I can take that'll do all the work for me. And so if I am at the time taking like a protein powder, you know, like aminos or pre-workout or something, then I'll be like, okay, well, this is exactly what I'm taking. Like, here are your answers. And then they go, well, what else are you doing? And I'm like, well, to be honest, it's really about the food. And I say that, and the same people come up to me week after week after week being like, you know, man, like I was really good with my diet for like 1 or 2 days here. And then I like got that Breyers ice cream one night, but like I'm really getting back on it. And then the same thing with alcohol. I tell people I don't drink. I never drink. And then they come to me and they're like, oh, I got wasted on Sunday and I just had a really bad workout on Monday and I'm just really trying to drop this fat for summer, you know? And I'm like, well, maybe you should cut alcohol. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I'll do that next week. And then they never do.
Yeah.
So I mean, the divide is like, I mean, make your own choices, right? Like if that's your life, like doesn't bother me, but bodybuilders are disciplined.
Yeah.
They're a disciplined group of people. And so if you come up to them and you're like, why do you look the way that you look? Aside from telling you whether or not they're juicing, they're going to give you a good idea. Like, this is what I eat and these are the supplements I take and here's a good protein powder for you. But a lot of people don't want to change that routine of theirs. A lot of people want their Dunkin' Donuts in the morning, you know?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because that bodybuilder in the gym talking to the meathead or whatever who's going out on Sundays getting wasted is giving him the secret, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not usually the supplement or whatever. It's like your diet, right? It's your nutrition. And they tell you that. But the same people are kind of coming week after week and they're just like, well, you know, I don't know. I worked out extra hard this week because I went out and got wasted on Sunday. Or, you know, because I binged and had a bunch of Breyers ice cream. But it's no big deal, you know, because I put in an extra 2 hours of cardio. And, you know, the experienced bodybuilders, the dedicated ones are just like, ugh. You know, and you can't stand that person, like, coming up to you day after day, asking the same questions, because the answer remains the same. And it's really about building those systems into your own life. It's about building that discipline, if that's the goal that you really want to pursue. So how did you decide that that was a goal that you wanted?
To be honest, I fell into it before I even knew it was a goal. The biggest thing was that when I first started going to the gym, it was because those were the only friends that I had made. I transferred schools and I got this gym membership and I kind of got like brought into this inner circle of bodybuilders. And it's like all these, like, I mean, we're talking like massive 220 pounds or more, like massive black bodybuilders. And here am I, like this 150-pound skinny suburban white kid. And they're all like, what are you doing here? And the one guy who brought me in, name's Chris. You can follow him on Instagram at C3Muscle, by the way. He brought me in and he told all of them. He walked around with all of them. He stood his ground and he was like, just watch this kid. Just give him a little bit of time and just watch. And so I got like ushered into this like inner circle of bodybuilders at my gym. And I wasn't making friends in my school because I'd gone to an art school for writing. So the program was great, but I really struggled to connect with the people because I was very athletic and I was very competitive, and I was done with the whole let's go out and get drunk and let's go smoke. I wanted something else, you know? And so I really just started going to the gym for the group of friends and for it being fun. And then before I knew it, I was in way too deep and I was lifting the 100-pound dumbbells and I was like a part of the community. And by that point, I was too far gone. I loved it and it became a part of who I am.
You just answered. That's the answer right there. It became a part of who you are. I love that.
Yeah.
Because for you, it's about the process. It's not about that goal. And I think when a lot of people see that, when they see that you are their goal, they assume that that's why you're doing it. But it's really, it doesn't have much to do with that at all. I think that's so cool.
And I will say the times when I've seen the most growth in my own body is when I looked in the mirror and I was completely forgiving with wherever I was in my process. Whether I felt small that day or whether I looked big, I accepted wherever I was. And I said, today is going to be a great lift and I'm going to make it the best that I can. The times when I saw the least amount of growth and I felt the worst about myself, in the gym is when I failed to keep that perspective, and I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm still not there yet.
Yeah.
Because that's when I made it about the body and instead of the process. And there are times that you still fall into that, you're like, oh, like I fell off with my food, I look a little smaller. But if you don't lift today, if you don't get your meals in today, you're just going to be small again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that perspective and be patient with yourself in the process, because it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Cole, we're just about out of time. I can't believe it. This has been a great show. Thank you so much for coming on. But before we go, why don't you tell folks where they can find you and what you're working on?
Sure. So right now you can follow me on Instagram at Nicolas Cole 77. That's NICOLASCOLE 77. I've also put up a Facebook page and YouTube page. Everything's under Nicolas Cole 77, where I'll be posting new content, really talking about a lot of the things that we've talked about here, and hoping to share the same sort of knowledge and get people talking about all of these topics, really. And then in addition to that, I've been working on a book for the past 2 years called Confessions of a Teenage Gamer, detailing my early years of diving into World of Warcraft and being that 90, 100-pound kid, and the effect that had on me, and then kind of seeing that transition into really the person that I am now. So come and support the pages and help me spread the word out there, so then a publisher will be kind enough to share my story.
I love it. I love it. Well, Cole, thank you so much for coming on. I'd love to have you on again to see how you're doing in a few months or years even. Maybe you'll be
Absolutely.
up to 250 pounds by then. True monster. But
I'll try.
Sincerely, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Cheers.
You too.